Okay, so we're gonna try to set record pace here. I need to go really quickly. It's 10 p.m. right now. I have a final tomorrow. It's more of a written essay. I don't really know if I should be filming this right now, but we're just gonna try to do this quickly anyway. It's been a while since I've recorded a recommendation video. I believe the last one I recorded was fall fantasy books or something like that. I feel like I've never done like a specific trope recommendation video because I'm kind of weird when it comes to like tropes, I guess. I don't actively go seeking them out. Like I do have favorite tropes. I would say enemies to lovers is up there, but I think my favorite would probably be like, is this even a trope? I guess like subplot romances. Enemies to lovers could be a subplot romance in its own way, couldn't it? I guess slow burn would be more of a trope. Slow burn subplot romance would probably be up top. Enemies to lovers maybe like third. I'm not sure what would go second, but enemies to lovers would probably not go second if I'm being honest. So I believe I have over 20 books in this recommendation video. There's definitely a scale here. Did I put them in the order of that said scale? No, I didn't because I'm lazy and it's already been 3 minutes. Oh my god. Okay, I'm gonna get into this recommendation video because I have to record another video after this. First one we have is Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. This is probably academic rivals to lovers, which is obviously like a different type of enemies to lovers. So this takes place in space. It's more like a sci-fi fantasy, I guess. Humans are on the brink of extinction, and so they're kind of trapped on this planet and they're forced to become pilots to fight back against aliens. This is very like subplot romance, which is probably why I like this book so much. So we have our main character Spensa, and she's kind of like the outcast in this world. Her father was known to be a coward, and so she doesn't exactly fit in with the rest of her classmates. And then there's this, I guess, model student named Jorgen, not Jordan, Jorgen for some reason. And Spensa kind of has this hateful relationship towards him in the beginning of this book. I say Spensa because it was very one-sided in the beginning, and then Jorgen kind of just went along with it. She really does not like this guy in the beginning of this book. It's more like hate to love. Spensa sort of thinks of him as her enemy in the beginning, but he's not really, if you know what I mean. So it's very hate to love in this book. Academic rivals because they're kind of in the same class, or more like they're in the same group of pilots that they're supposed to be learning in, and Jorgen's the leader of that kind of group, and Spensa kind of wanted to be that, so she kind of resents him for that. Next one we have is Renegades by Marissa Meyer. This is secret enemies to lovers. So in this world there are heroes and villains. It's very like superhero-esque. Our main character Nova wants to get revenge against the Renegades. She goes undercover to the Renegades base to kind of infiltrate them, find out their secrets. And then our second main character is Adrian. He's on the hero side. This isn't really like I want to stab you to death type of enemies to lovers. It's more like our two main characters are on opposite sides, the superheroes and the villains, Nova being on the villain side, Adrian being on the superhero side. And so Nova kind of hates the superheroes at first until she like gets to know them and gets to know Adrian, and Adrian doesn't know that she's a villain. This was one of the first secret enemies to lovers I've ever read, and something about it just stuck with me. I think it's because the identity reveal didn't happen in the first book. Next one we have is one that I'm gonna explain really quickly because this one's actually really popular. It's Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. So I think you all know what this is about unless you've been living under a rock. It's about dragon riders, our main character being Violet, and then her main love interest being Xaden. And Violet in the beginning of this book thinks like, oh, he wants to kill me so badly, and like I should avoid him as much as possible because he hates me so much. Obviously that doesn't happen though. We all know what happens when it comes to enemies to lovers. Next one is A Far Wilder Magic by Alison Saff. This is Full Metal Alchemist inspired. I don't know if any of you have watched the anime. So our main character Margaret lives a very quiet life, sort of. She doesn't get along with a lot of people in the town. This guy comes around to her house and he's looking for a teacher to teach him alchemy. He's been having trouble finding a teacher, and so one day he knocks on Margaret's house and he's like, hey, is your mom here? Because Margaret's mom is a really well-known alchemist. Margaret's mom has been gone for a while, and so she makes this deal with this guy and is like, if you enter this tournament with me, I'll ask my mom to come home and teach you. It's very hate to love. At first they don't get along. It's very opposites attract, I guess. Also very slow burn. Next one we have is She Gets the Girl by Rachel Lippincott and Alison Derrick. So this is a sapphic college romance. It's about a girl named Molly and a girl named Alex. Molly is very introverted while Alex is very outgoing, very social, and Alex has been having trouble with her girlfriend. Her girlfriend broke up with her right before she went off to college, and so she wants to try to get her back. And so she meets Molly and she's like, hey, I'll make you a deal. I'll help you get a date with your crush if you help me put in a good word to my ex-girlfriend when she comes to visit later. In the beginning, they definitely don't like each other. Molly meets Alex at this party and she feels like Alex is coming on to Molly's crush. So Molly's just like, oh my god, I hate that girl. She has so much that I don't have. So sort of hate to love in the beginning, not like enemies, and it's very like opposites attract as well. There were so many scenes in this book that I loved actually. This was the first romance book I ever read that I was just like, oh my god, I want to read more books that are like this. Next one is This Is How You Lose the Time War by Max Gladstone and Amal El Motar. So we have two characters, Red and Blue, and they're on opposite sides of a war, and they get to know each other through letters that they leave in like these spots in different timelines. I believe they're both secret agents for their sides of the war. This book was so beautifully written though. It wasn't like they hated each other exactly or they wanted to actively kill each other. It was more like they were on opposite sides of the war and they couldn't be together sort of thing. I really love the letter writing aspect of this book though. I always love letters in books. Next one we have is A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. This one's more academic rivals to lovers. So we have our main character Effie and then we have Preston. They meet at Effie's favorite author's house because her favorite author had offered her to like redesign his house, and she's like, oh my god, yes, obviously I want to go to my favorite author's old house. And so she goes there, meets Preston. They kind of have this hate to love relationship, and they kind of just figure out a bunch of weird things about this house, magical things, more like in Effie's perspective, because honestly Preston kind of thinks she's going crazy. Next one we have is also another popular one, so I'll be really quick. It's Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. Academic rivals, workplace romance. Our two main characters are Iris and Roman. They both work at the same newspaper sort of company. They're both trying to get the same promotion, but the thing is only one of them can get it, and so they're competing with each other to see like who can write the best newsletter articles, I believe, or something. There's magical typewriters in this book, and there's letter writing, secret identity letter writing. Next one we have is One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. So this is enemy witch families. Two of the main characters meet in the beginning of this book, but they don't know that they're from the enemy side, and so they kind of start this secret romance that no one else in their families know about. This is Romeo and Juliet inspired. I really loved the secret enemies to lovers though in this book at the beginning. I became very attached to that specific couple. I believe there's a few enemies to lovers romances in here. I can't really remember which one. There's only that one that I remember, but I think there is a couple. This one we have is Legend by Marie Lu. This one is Secret Enemies to Lovers. I feel like a lot of these are Secret Enemies to Lovers. Should I just rename this video Secret Enemies to Lovers recommendations? So we have our first main character, June, who is a military prodigy in the Republic, and then Day is a suspect in a crime he didn't commit. So obviously they're not supposed to fall in love with each other, but they do. What I like about Marie Lu's books is that they're very fast paced and there's always something happening. Next one we have is A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. This one isn't really enemies to lovers, but it's enemies to lovers-esque. You know, if there's like a package that says chocolate flavored, but it's not actually chocolate, that's kind of what I mean. I know that sounds weird, but there is actually things like that. I bought a bun the other day that said it was chocolate flavored, but there was no actual chocolate in it. Very confusing. Anyway, sorry, I'm blabbering. So this book is childhood enemies. They used to be enemies when they were children. Then our main character Jack moved away, and then years later when he's an adult, he comes back to his home island because there's this thing that's happening where girls are getting kidnapped, and so he kind of uses his musician skills. I forget what instrument he has, but he uses those skills, his magic, to help find the lost girls who got kidnapped and to talk to the spirits on the island to see if they can help. His love interest is, oh my god, I can't even remember her name, but they're sort of like forced to work together, and it is kind of awkward in the beginning because again, they used to be enemies when they were little, but now that they're older, they kind of have this different mindset. Next one we have is another popular one. It's Six of Crows by Lee Bardugo. So there is one romance in here that's enemies to lovers, and it's Nina and Matthias. I believe Matthias is supposed to be some form of a witch hunter. I could be wrong about that. Then Nina's a sort of witch. It kind of starts out as they're enemies, but then they're forced to work together, but then they turn into lovers. A betrayal happens, sort of, and then they're back to enemies and then back to lovers. It's so good though. Like, it really is. Like, I know it sounds messy, but they're so good together. Next one we have is If You Could See the Sun by Anne Liang. This is academic rivals to lovers, magical realism. So our main character kind of has this problem where for some reason she just starts randomly turning invisible one day. The main love interest, he kind of doesn't know that they have a rivalry between them, but the girl is like, oh my god, I hate this guy so much because he keeps getting better grades than me. And so when this girl is like, yeah, but we hate each other, and the guy is just like, we hate each other, question mark. I thought this book was so cute. This romance was like the best part of this book. Next one we have is The Ballad of Song, Birds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. I feel like I'm kind of crazy for recommending this book, not gonna lie, but it is sort of enemies to lovers. I think we all know how the Hunger Games works. The district people are forced to fight, and then they have like mentors to teach them who are like the rich people. So the romance happens between Snow and then I think her name was Lucy. Am I wrong about that? I'm so sorry. I'm really bad at remembering names when it comes to books I haven't read in a while. Snow is Lucy's mentor, and I don't know, I feel like she's there to show him a different side of the world, but then obviously there's like these messed up thoughts going in Snow's head. Next one we have is Captive Prince by C.S. Picot. There are some things in this book that I don't exactly approve of, like the slavery and then some other things. So it's about two princes and they're both on enemy sides, but then one day one of the princes gets captured and he's forced to travel to the enemy side where he meets the other prince, and he's forced to become that prince's slave. Let me just say, there's like no romance at all in the first book. They absolutely despise each other in the first book. Like, the prince who owns the other prince basically just sort of tortures him. Also, the prince who owns the other prince doesn't know that that prince is a prince. He just thinks he's a random person from the enemy side that he owns. So yeah, there is secret identity enemies to lovers in here and very enemies to lovers. Honestly, this book was wild. Next one we have is This Savage Song by V.E. Schwab. This is secret enemies to lovers in the beginning, and then one of them finds out, goes to hunt the other, and is like, I'm gonna kill you sort of thing. Our first main character, Kate, has like a really intense father who wants her to be like as aggressive as he is. On the inside, she's like, this doesn't feel right, but I have to do what he says, and I want to be what he is, because in the beginning, he's kind of like her role model. On the other side, we have August, who's a monster. He's always wanted to be human, so he kind of tries to imitate like human emotions and human actions. And one day, they're both kind of forced to work together. They have to run away from this enemy that's chasing them and hunting them down. This is one of those books that kept me up at 2 a.m. in the morning. Like, my eyes would pop open in the middle of the night, and I would just randomly be thinking about this book. Next one we have is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. If you don't know what this book is about, again, you probably have been living under a rock. So this is about the Prince of England and the US president's son, I believe. They kind of have like a bad first impressions sort of meeting, and so they kind of have this argument, knock down a cake, and that becomes news, and so they have to be forced to become friends, quote unquote friends, because they don't really like each other in the beginning, and so they're kind of forced to get along in interviews and stuff, until one day, I don't know, they kind of find like a way to become friends. They start texting each other more often, start sending each other pictures, really cute text messages. I love text messages in books as well. Next one we have is Defy the Night by Bridget Kemmerer. This one's sort of secret enemies to lovers because she doesn't really know who he is in the beginning of this book. So we have our girl main character who's kind of like a Robin Hood outlaw, and then our prince main love interest who's the hated prince of this entire kingdom. He's kind of forced to be like the brutal prince type though, and that's why everyone hates him so much, because they kind of have the wrong idea of him. So our girl main character one day gets kind of stolen away to the palace, and she finds out who her partner in crime really is, and it turns out he's the hated prince of the kingdom. And so she obviously doesn't like him either, kind of wants to kill him for lying to her, because they were partners working together to steal from the rich, but she didn't know who he really was. He never told her his actual name. Next one we have is She Drives Me Crazy by Kelly Quinlan. Our main character, Scotty, is a basketball player on the girls team. She absolutely hates this cheerleader girl because there was this misunderstanding in the past where this cheerleader girl kind of did something to Scotty's car. They absolutely despise each other, but then there's this thing that happens where they need to start fake dating. Very hate each other because of a misunderstanding to lovers situation. Next one we have is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia Fair by Heather Fawcett. This is academic rivals to lovers. So we have Emily, who is like very introverted. She doesn't get along with people, doesn't know how to talk to them. And then there's Wendell, who really knows how to talk to people, charms them very easily. There's also this secret he's keeping that's been bugging Emily for a while. Emily doesn't really like him in the beginning because, again, he's very good at what he does when it comes to like researching fairies. He's also just slightly annoying to her because of his outgoing personality. So I would say like kind of opposites attract in this book as well. Next one we have is Loveless by Alice Oseman. It's more of a side romance in this book that's enemies to lovers between the main character's best friend and her roommate, and they absolutely hate each other in the beginning of this book. The main character's best friend kind of has this image of the main character's roommate for some reason that just doesn't suit her, and so the roommate is like, okay, well, if you hate me, I'm gonna hate you too, I guess. So they argue for a good majority of this book, not gonna lie. It's kind of an acting romance as well. They're trying to form a play all together, like this specific friend group, and so in a way they're also forced to work together. Next one we have is Letters to the Lost by Bridget Kemmerer. This one's more like hate to love and then secret identity. There's also letter writing in this book. So we have Juliet, who just lost her mother, but then one day when she goes to her mother's grave, she sees that someone left a letter there, or no, they left a letter inside of the letter she had left for her mother, and then she's like, oh my god, this person is so rude, like who would read and write in someone else's letter? And so she kind of writes back to them, and then they kind of have this back and forth, and obviously it's secret identity because they don't know who they're writing. They go to the same school. The guy main character, Declan, is like an outcast in their school. He's very hated because people don't really know who he is. They have a certain image of him that's like, he's dangerous, we should stay away from him. And Juliet also kind of goes with the flow when it comes to that. They also have like a bad encounter in the beginning of this book, which is why they really start hating each other. Next one we have is Immortal Longings by Chloe Gong. Enemies to lovers in a death tournament sort of situation. So this tournament is kind of like entertainment in a way, I guess. They decide to work with each other because it's not common for people to work together in this type of tournament, and they think the crowds would really like it, but also they think they both have a better chance of winning the entire thing if they work together. And so a very complicated relationship, not gonna lie. I also found the ending really unexpected. I feel like the enemy thing really stuck out in this book though. Like you could tell they also felt it, like they knew they were both enemies and yet they were still falling in love with each other, but they knew one of them had to kill one another in the end. The feeling really digs in when you read the book. Last book we have is An Education in Malice by S.T. Gibson. This is one I started reading recently, but I found out it was enemies to lovers, which I thought was extremely good timing because obviously I'm filming this video, so I'm not too far into this book, but it's academic rivals to lovers and it's between two writers. So for our first main character, she meets our second main character in the beginning of the school year. It's kind of like a love at first sight sort of thing, but then she finds out how much of a mean girl our second main character is. And so they kind of start this enemies thing because our second main character is jealous of our first main character because our first main character made such an impact in their poetry class. Yeah, and so now they're kind of like, oh, this girl's my enemy, I hate her. I'm so sorry, I'm really bad at explaining books if I don't remember the names of characters, if you couldn't tell. There is vampires in this book, really surprisingly. But anyways, I've been recording for 40 minutes, which is very much longer than I intended, so I'm gonna end this video right here. Leave down in the comments if you guys have any enemies to lovers recommendations, and yeah, I need to go record that second video, so I'm gonna go. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.